What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Foots the King. Quick housekeeping note. Me and Skywalker still recorded this one. You guys are going to love it. But I want to do something, okay? And I need you guys to hear me out. I need you guys to head over to Skywalker Still's channel and make sure you guys are subscribed. He does a lot for the community. He runs his morning show. He's helping now on the Cowboys Collective. And he recently started his channel, Skywalker Still Unleashed. Let's get him to 10K. Let's get him in that algorithm where you guys are seeing his videos pop up, and he's one of those ones because we all know Skywalker Still is one of those ones. We talked about the offense. We talked about Clayton Adams. We talked about George Pickens. This is one of my favorite videos because we did this piece last year, and this year I think it should even be better when you talk about a deep dive on offense and what this offense will look like. You guys enjoy the content, and remember what I said. The link will be in the description box to Skywalker Still's channel. Yes, this channel is on the road to 40K, but let's make sure we helping the brother out. Enjoy. When you guys see this brother on the screen, you know we not playing around, and this is one that I've really been looking forward to. I've been bugging Sky for the last probably 2 to 3 weeks, and he's getting back in the zone. His channel is up and booming. The link will be in the description box. We want to make sure that we show Skywalker Still Unleashed a bunch of love. He's unleashed, guys. And we did this segment last year on Mike Zimmer.
Yeah.
And it was a deep dive on what the defense would look like, what it would feel like. And it took a little while for the defense to really hit its stride. But once it did, I can say that everything that Scott kind of talked to us about was spot on. Well, if you guys in the community don't know, Sky does, to me, one of the best jobs of anybody when it comes to breaking down offensive coordinators, breaking down coaches, breaking down scheme. We talk off the record, on the record. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to break down this offense. Now, let's rewind. Obviously, Mike McCarthy out, Brian Schottenheimer in, Clayton Adams in, Connor Riley in, Tyler Booker in, George Pickens in, Jadon Blue in. If I'm forgetting anybody, Sky, smack me in the back of my head.
That just got me fired up. You naming all of that just got me fired up. Go ahead, Foot.
So, to first look forward, I want to take a step back. In a nutshell, Sky, what went wrong with this offense last year? And I know that's, if you can't put it in a nutshell, that's fine. But if there's one thing that Brian Schottenheimer should be learning, if there's one thing that Brian Schottenheimer should be learning from this offense last year, what do you think that would be?
Ooh, just one?
Take your time.
I would say if it was just one, it'd be the lack of an offensive identity and creativity. If I can cheat, that's two, but I'm gonna put them in one.
Yeah.
I think for an offense that, lacked explosiveness already across the board, you had to lean on the explosive players that you did have. And we talk about that a lot. We don't believe that they did that. There weren't many playmakers, but the few you had, I don't think they schematically game plan those guys to get the rock week in, week out. And I just don't think you can afford to be both uncreative, right, unimaginative, and not get your guys the ball. So, whether that's a schematic thing, whether that's a poor execution thing, whatever you want to call it, I think it left the offense really with no identity and a consistent threat opposite of, who, CeeDee Lamb. So, getting back to having an identity on offense and what I believe will be a more creative offense with Schottenheimer, that'll help in of itself. And of course, right, injuries, they suffer some big injuries, Dak Prescott, Zach Martin, Brandon Cooks. But even before those guys got hurt, that was a problem, right? The offense was still inconsistent. And then obviously we can go down the line. Their offensive line play was extremely inconsistent. Even in the games they won, they were inconsistent and did not having a threat in the backfield, like a home run threat, somebody or an explosive player, that hurts too, because you're not dictating to the defense. The defense isn't reacting to your run game. They don't care about it. They can put light boxes, and your run game is not going to have explosive plays. Even if they rip off a 5 to 10 yard game, they don't care, right? They made the Cowboys earn every yard and earn every point and get 6 points the hard way. And a lot of the times, they was getting 3.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that, I've seen people floating around some of the, Dak Prescott was 11-8 last year to start the season. And I'll say this to pat Scott on the back. He kind of called it early on that the offense, while you squeaked out a few wins, it had no rhythm. It had no flow. It had no rhyme or reason. It was a lot of quick game. It was a lot of CD go turnaround. It was no shots, even running the ball, and defending Mike McCarthy at times, but running the ball, it felt like you were running the ball just to get runs on the stat sheet versus creativity.
100%.
And so that's going to segue us, Sky, into the era of Brian Schottenheimer, who right now, if you were taken aback by the hire, you can do nothing but love how he's handled his first go round of an offseason. And we'll just start with the big one, hiring an offensive coordinator who you and I both love, and Clayton Adams. Sky, take your time on this one. We were talking pre-show. You wanted to talk about kind of like who Clayton Adams is, and I'll make sure that I jump in as well. But I want you to have a floor on this one because Clayton Adams just got some stuff in his bag that I don't think that people know just how well he's going to coach this team.
I don't either, man. And I'm going to try to do my damnedest here in the next coming days to do a deeper dive with Clayton Adams. But I'll give you two nuggets.
Yes.
Two nuggets that kind of, I don't want to say explain who he is, but just shows you how good his resume is. When he got to Indianapolis as an assistant offensive line coach with Chris Strouser, by the way, if you don't know who Chris Strouser is, he's the guy who just got fired with the Houston Texans because they had one of the worst offensive lines the last 2 years. But in Indianapolis, he worked under Chris Strouser, but he was really the main cog in that machine, in my opinion. When he got there, the Colts did something for the first time in 20 years, damn near, and that was become a top 10 rushing team, okay? Jonathan Taylor wasn't on that team. You know who the leading rusher was? Marlon Mack.
Okay? What
First
a nugget.
time in almost 20 years, they got top 10 as a rush team with Marlon Mack. All right. So you could talk about his tenure there, Pro Bowl offensive lineman that he helped coach up. And then he was promoted to tight ends coach so they wouldn't poach him. But then you go to Arizona. Arizona hires him as the offensive line coach. Arizona goes on in his first year to be a top 5 rushing team. The first time they were a top 5 rushing team, and hear me out here, in 44 years.
Talk about change, Sky.
44 years.
I know change gonna come.
It's gonna come, Cowboys Nation, because there is a Clayton Adams effect, and not just the volume, right? Like the overall, but go look at James Conner.
Yes.
Look at James Conner. The effect he had on James Conner. James Conner was very average, mediocre running back before Clayton Adams got there, and as soon as the very first year, he averages 5 yards a pop. Right, backup running back averaged 5 yards a pop. The very next year, those 2 years combined, he doubled the amount of 10+ yard runs that they had in 15+ yard runs. So the Clayton Adams effect is real. And if you don't believe me, Chris Strouser ended up going to the Texans after 2022 and only lasted a few years because their offensive line was terrible. Clayton Adams, he got promoted twice. Just saying.
Wow. What a great job by Brian Schottenheimer surrounding people around him that are smarter than him. That's what great leaders do. You get what I'm saying? Now, we'll get to Brian Schottenheimer, the play caller. We'll talk about a few things that you think that he may do offensively. But I want to put a bullet in something you said about Clayton Adams and the offensive line and how he was able to coach that up. But the running back room, Sky, we now have had a draft. We now have had free agency, and we don't know if we're done yet. But one of the big talking points in the community, Sky, is should you bring in Nick Chubb? Should you try to get Breece Hall? Should you try to poach another one? I think a guy like J.K. Dobbins actually makes more sense. But whoever it could be, right? But I've pushed back and said, and it's crazy to hear myself say this because I've always been draft, running back, the names, right? And I've always said you need a certain type of runner.
Yeah.
But looking at the Cowboys offseason plan with bringing in Booker, signing 25-11 guards, okay, now it's more run game with Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, Jadon Blue, and Phil Maffa. What say you to that, Skywalker Still?
Yeah, we were talking about this on the collective. I don't look at that room and I'm satisfied. I would like to get to camp, and they do this all the time, right? We'll get to camp, see how they are, and then they'll make some moves. They did it with many positions, but just last year, they weren't satisfied. They went out and got Dalvin Cook, right? And then they kept Dalvin Cook on the bench for a long, long time. But I'm all for getting to camp and letting these guys compete and see who stands out. And if nothing works out, go get somebody. But I would be lying. I would be lying if I said I wouldn't be for them right now taking a look to see if they can upgrade the talent in the backfield. I'm a firm believer in give me a run scheme, give me good run blocking first, and then I'll be okay if not okay, I'll be wonderful if I got one of them Adrian Peterson type backs, Saquon Barkley type backs. But I'm a firm believer you can have that. Just look at Saquon Barkley in New York, all world, all generational type of talent. But in New York, he couldn't be that consistently because their offensive line and run game stunk. Like their scheme stunk. Dallas, I think, will get a better run scheme, and it will help the offensive line, which in theory will help the running backs. But I'm not ready outside of Jaden Blue and Javonte Williams to say, hey, this running back room makes me comfortable. I do think Javonte Williams will be a part of this thing. I do. I don't, based off of the rest of the room, I can pretty much be confident with that. When they first signed him, I said, well, let's wait and see. We got the draft. We got more free agency. They might bring somebody in here better than him. I don't think that necessarily has been the case. I don't think there's a lead back, a starting back to start off the game that is going to be better than him. Now, people might say Phil Maffa. I say, sure. I mean, I like what he could potentially bring from a power standpoint, but I'm not as sold that Phil Maffa's the guy just quite yet. Let's let him get out there and go do it. He does bring some size and physicality to the position. And with running backs, you can find him late in the draft. But let's go see him do it. I've seen Javonte Williams be able to succeed in this league. Last year, he got beat out by some guys as well. So the room doesn't make me comfortable to be short, bro.
What great stuff, Skywalker. Still, I think that these are the conversations that have to happen with the community, right? Before we just say, let's go get said person, because in their mind, you know, you just laid out some good things, but in their mind, they may say, you know what, with what we brought in Pickens and with the step that Dak's going to make in this scheme, and with the step that some of these other guys are going to make in this scheme, we may be okay running back wise by committee. It's just going to be interesting to see, do they have guys that can be guys when it's time to be a guy? Okay, Sky, moving right along to Brian Schottenheimer. So we're going through the offseason. We go through the draft, and now seeing it happen in real time and play out in real time, everything has moved offseason wise to me as an A+. And that starts with the draft, the free agency part of it. Obviously, George Pickens wasn't a free agent. He was traded for, but they've answered every air quote hole, right? And even Dak Prescott came out to say today and said, you know, hey, we needed help in that room. We needed to get CD some help. So it's good to hear that part of it. Now let's talk about Brian Schottenheimer, the play caller. I wanted you to put a pin in something because I have thoughts that liken it to a Cincinnati, liken it to a Minnesota with two lead receivers, because Skywalker Still's thing has been 1A, 1B. People got to stop calling George Pickens a 2. And Stephen Jones came out and agreed with you, Sky. 1A, 1B. This guy has playmaking real potential. Well, you look at Minnesota and you look at Jordan Addison and you look at Jettas and you look at Cincinnati and you look at those two beasts in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Let's enter Dallas Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. As a play caller, Sky, what will that look like for Brian Schottenheimer, and just how much we've said it ad nauseum, but now we're talking about the whole offense as a body. Junior Adams is now a part of this as the receivers coach. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the whole offense as a body. Play caller wise, what does this look like for Brian Schottenheimer?
Well, whether they got Pickens or not, I think the philosophy of Shotty was going to remain. I just think it's going to be heightened. It's going to be even better when you bring in a George Pickens. But I'll use Shotty's words, right? He talked about this at his presser, and I believe Shotty because of his background, and we can get to that if you want. But he brought up he's a big believer in what? Cut splits. He's a big believer in shifts in motion, marrying the run with the pass. He wants the pass game and run game to look identical, right? So it can help sell the fakes, hit those intermediates. He talked about tempo. He said, look, these guys love tempo. They respond well to tempo, which makes me believe they wanted to run more tempo. But the other guy didn't really want to run more tempo, right? Yeah. He talked about being proud that he had a team, or he led teams in Seattle in rushing yards, right? And that it's not just about the volume of the rushes, but the efficiency and how the run game and pass game go hand in hand.
Yes.
This is what he said. So when I see all these things, right, like cut splits, shifts in motions, marrying the run with the pass, tempo, I immediately think about the modern day offenses that you see under the Shanahans, the McVays, the Daniels, the O'Connells, my man in Green Bay, Matt LaFleur.
Matt
Like,
LaFleur.
I think the Cowboys offense will look more like that than it will look like what it was under Mike McCarthy. And I think from the outside world, when Schottenheimer got hired, kind of fans, the general fans said, "Oh man, it's going to be the same offense." And I'm like, no, I don't think it is. He doesn't come from Mike McCarthy's tree. He wasn't under Mike McCarthy. You go look at his background. I hate to be long-winded about this, but
No, take your time. This is what this is for.
You go look into his background. He may come from Marty Ball in his bloodline, right? Meaning that's part of his bloodline. But his individual makeup, it's really not who he is. Yes. I believe he was forced, and I don't want to use the term forced, but he was kind of encouraged to play a lot of run game style of offenses because he was under nothing but defensive-minded head coaches.
Rex Ryan,
Jeff Fisher, Pete Carroll, right? And I think there might be one more I'm missing here, but that might be it. But it's not like he was under offensive-minded coaches. He was under his own. He could do his own thing. He never had enough juice to be like, this is my offense. No. The head coach is, we're going to be a defensive team. We're going to run the ball. When he wanted to expand from just being, we're going to run the ball first down, second down in Seattle, look what happened.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson started to, hey, man, let Russ cook. And he became like MVP type caliber numbers, but it didn't always align with Pete Carroll. Yeah. And him and Pete Carroll had a split, and they said it was philosophical differences. And if you dive deep into that situation, flat out, Schottenheimer wanted to expand the offense and get back to taking shots and get back to doing more things creatively from a pass game standpoint. What did Pete Carroll want to do? First down run, second down run, third down pass, play defense. And it came to a head, and it didn't work out. So you said something earlier. He's smart enough to realize to bring other smart people in the room. The guy that's going to be responsible for the run game is not going to be Schottenheimer. It's going to be Clayton Adams. Shotty understand. Go look at Shotty's resume. He was a wide receiver coach. He was a quarterbacks coach. He was a passing game coordinator. He was a tight ends coach. Where do you see running backs? Where do you see it?
Ooh,
where do you see offensive line?
In a duffel. That's what we got up here, y'all.
You don't see that because Shotty, and what was he? He was a quarterback. Yeah. Shotty wants to be a creative throwing team, but he knows they can't just win on that. So you bring in a guy who did what? Did things in Arizona and in the coast that they haven't done in 40 and 20 years when it comes to the run game. He's smart enough to realize that and marry that together. And that's why I think you're going to see a completely different offense. You can say, Sky, you just selling Kool-Aid. I'm not. I'm just reading the context clues. And I will be shocked if this offense doesn't look more like you see in the modern day and it looks like what you saw in McCarthy. I'd be shocked.
Skywalker still, ladies and gentlemen, this is the deep dive conversation. There's no back and forth. This is the conversation that we want to have with you guys, because there's two things that you said right there, Sky, that I wanted to horn in on you. And that's something, but people that you brought up. You brought up a name in Matt LaFleur. Yeah. By far some of the best run designs. If not, people talk Shanny, and Shanny is really good.
People talk Ben Johnson. But I think
I think Matt's run game design. And so you sent me some plays, and we've watched Arizona. I think if you're not paying attention, because Arizona out west, and if you weren't watching, then you wouldn't know just some of the stuff. I'm telling you, dude, they're running power with a sniffer inserting in the run. They're running wham. It looks like power. They're running all these different schemes. I mean, me and Scott, like, hey, is that what I'm seeing? They're running old school buck sweep. They're pulling both guards. All these types of things. And these are what me and you talked about, is like Mike McCarthy will run the ball to get to a number.
Mm-hmm.
I think Clayton Adams and Brian Schottenheimer are going to, number one, marry the run with the pass and take shots. And you could do that with the George Pickens because one of them is a few misnomers. And as you were talking, I'm just getting ideas. People think that George Pickens can only win up on the hash or on the edge, true X receiver, right?
Yeah.
That's not true. He actually wins over the middle of the field. Russ just wouldn't throw him the ball last year. If you go back to 2023 and they did some cool things, if you give him a chance over the middle of the field, he can catch the ball. He has that big of a catch radius.
And take it to the crib.
So now, if you marry the run game and his run game and it looks the same, and you marry that with the play action passing game, I think that's where we're going to see this Cowboys team win. I got one more question for you. Sky, you sent me a few plays, and I think this is where the Cowboys live this year. Not more than none, but they'll have the two trees out there. But Sky, how do we feel about 12 personnel and 13 personnel getting more big bodies out there, expanding the C gap, expanding those running lanes, and then hitting them with play action shots with CD and George Pickens? Because I think that's the world schematically that Dallas may live in.
Yeah, I mean, if you base it off of what Arizona did, they were top 5 under Clayton Adams in 13 personnel.
Wow.
Right. So
and
you've seen some of those plays that I sent you. A lot of those were out of 13 personnel in different type of formations. And there was some where they were spread out wide, maybe some motion. They were condensed splits. Right. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Cutting down the splits what Schottenheimer wants to do. There was a whole lot of movement with those guys. They're pulling, there's wham blocks. They're getting out there with the tackles or guards. I mean, he was creative in how he used 13 personnel. It reminds me, and this might make y'all chuckle, but it reminds me when Kellen Moore decided to be creative. You remember that year with Dalton Schultz, Peyton Hendershot, and Jake Ferguson? He would roll out a cool 13 personnel look, and we would see it every so often. It reminds me of that, but more consistent. So I do think we'll see a lot of 13 personnel. They weren't a heavy 12 personnel set, but I think we'll see more 12 personnel than you saw under McCarthy. You go look at the 2 years McCarthy called plays. Dallas was very low in 12 personnel. I don't know why. He always talks about tight ends. He was a tight end. They took a tight end in the second round, and they didn't use it, and maybe because school just wasn't ready. But I do think you'll see more 12 and more 13, and that plays into what? Running, play action, taking shots. You got 2 dynamic receivers. Maybe you don't need to have that 11 personnel in there 70% of the time. So I'm with you. I think we'll see more of it, and I think it'll be efficient, honestly. Even without the star running back, it'll just be more about the how. And that was my big problem. It was the how over the last, 3-4 years.
Yeah, and I also think, too, one thing that I think NFL fans and Cowboys fans should remember is the league still hasn't caught up to how to quite defend and what personnel you have to have on the field to defend big body 11 personnel. So that could I just remember what Arizona was able to do to us, and we had all those little bodies out there, and Dan Quinn's running cover 1, and he's not adjusting to what was getting done to us. And again, if you really want to go back to that playoff game versus the Packers, it was the same type deal. They're running, they had 3 tight ends on the field at times, and we're still in the same defensive look. And Mike is getting double teamed. He's getting reached. We're not matching personnel groupings, and we got beat. We got beat bad. Sky, I want to end with this. Give me a name and as at a receiver, a tight end, at running back that we should keep our eyes on in this new look offense. Just give me one name that maybe isn't the low hanging fruit.
Ooh, it's tough. It's tough to do because I do think the top guys are all going to be, heightened with this new scheme, right? Lamb and Pickens and them boys and Jake Ferguson. I just think they are going to be really good. But if I had to think of a name outside of that, we brought up Mingo a lot. If Mingo could win wide receiver 3, I think he can do some big slot things, some power slot things for you. Tight end wise, I like Brevis.
Go, my boy. Go. I was saying, go my boy, Scott. Go my boy, Brevin. Let's get it.
I like Brev, man. I do. I liked him last year coming out. I thought he could make the team, and he did make the team. It's just a weird spot opposite of Jake Ferguson. I know some people are out on Ferguson. I promise you, if you go dive deep into Jake Ferguson's year last year, you'll come away like, oh, my bad. I was tripping. Jake Ferguson prior to Dak going down was on pace to have another solid year from a yardage standpoint. They just didn't utilize him in the red zone no more. And I'm not trying to put the cape on for Jake. It's just that I'm seeing so many people like, man, Jake this, Jake that. I'm like, wait a minute now. The dude was a dude in 2023. He got hurt, and his quarterback got hurt in 24, and now we're ready to throw him out the bathwater. Ladies and gentlemen, he led the league in red zone targets in 23, only to have 5 in 2024. Jake Ferguson had to deal with Cooper Rush when he got in there, and his targets dropped, I think, 3 targets per game and went down. You know what I'm saying? And when he was in there with Dak Prescott, I think he was hovering around 45 or so yards a game. If you put that out over the season, that's a solid season. So, and he wasn't utilized the same way. I feel like the staff didn't have confidence in the offensive line, that they held back on the playbook. And that affected not just Ferg, everybody. If you go look at everybody's numbers across the board, they were down for a number of different reasons. But my bad. I didn't mean to go off on Ferg. I think he's going to bounce back fine if he doesn't have any injuries. But Brevin Spann-Ford, I think there's a possibility he can help push Schoonmaker. Schoonmaker showed up though at towards the end, middle and last year, right? He showed some flashes where he can be reliable in that sense. So I don't think it's going to be easy. It's just, man, 6'7". When he's engaged, he's a big body. He can block. I think he's better after the catch than Schoon. I think he's more athletic. I know the athletic numbers will say Schoon, but the actual play on the field, he's more athletic in that sense. It could be a situation where, I think Brevin can push him. And even if he doesn't win it, you're going to need 3 under Clayton Adams. And I think you can have a solid 3 to fulfill the role of 13 personnel. You may not have a Travis Kelce of the bunch, but I don't think you're going to need the Travis Kelce. I think Ferg can easily get you 7 to 800 yards, right? And then 5 or so touchdowns. They can get back into that.
Yeah. And running back room, Sky. Give me one runner that we need to think about. I think I know you're going to say.
I don't want to. Low-hanging fruit to me is Jaden Blue.
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's where I wanted you to go. Because, I think that people may have, kind of like their picks, and Deuce Vaughn still has a contingency. But I'm glad you went with Blue, because I think that as well, especially in the passing game.
Right, and Blue in the passing game, and I have a weird confidence with Javonte Williams because I just think he's going to be a starting running back to start off. Because I just don't think the room has anybody in there right now to be kind of that thunder-ish lightning guy. But think about this for a second. 3rd downs, Jaden Blue's going to be in there sometimes, but you also need a guy that you're confident in pass blocking. It's not Phil Maffa. It's not Jaden Blue. It's not Miles Sanders. It's not Deuce Vaughn.
Javonte Williams.
It's Javonte Williams. And people forget, like, he also can catch the ball out the backfield. I think he was maybe the 3rd leading receiver or something like that, reception-wise in Denver a few times. He had like 40 receptions or so a few times in Denver. So he can catch the rock at the backfield too. Not saying he's dynamic at it, but he's a guy that they can trust for 3 downs. Again, don't think he's going to blow you away. No. I just think he's somebody that you have to say, don't be shocked if he's your starting running back going into the season if they don't add anybody else into that room.
Man, I can't thank you enough for this, Skywalker. Still, again, then like you said, to your point, Javonte Williams had 52 receptions last year, so that's actually really well.
Just last year, 52. He didn't even play that.
Catches. Yeah,
he didn't even start all games.
Yeah, so they really, and that's reliable hands. So, I just think as a whole that will really be. I think I am ready to say that I feel confident. And the Pickens move, along with what you did in the draft, securing and being able to be stout up front, I do think that this team will have a better offense. I'm not ready to say it's going to be a top 10 offense, but the offense will have purpose. It'll have meaning. It'll have meaning, and you have your starting quarterback, so that means the world. Guys, all the work. Me and Skywalker still be working together every week, so you guys will see us on the screen. But getting him in this space, it meant so much to me, because these are the type of conversations that we're going to continue to have on this channel. So you guys, again, I'm going to say it 1,000 times. Make sure you guys like, share, subscribe. At the beginning of the video, I put his information on there, and we want to get Skywalker Still's channel booming. And we want to get it up, and we want to get it on that algorithm. So as always, guys, thank you all for always, Sky. Thank you all for liking, sharing, subscribing. We're on the road to 40K. You guys send this video around. Brian Schottenheimer is the man. And ultimately, I do feel very, very confident. It's your boy, Foots the King, Skywalker Still. Thank you for stopping through. Unleashed. We will see you guys on the Cowboys Collective. We'll see you guys on his channel, my channel. and we love you all. Peace is up.
Peace.